Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, but I'm not talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. This is actually a review on Halls of Undermountain for 4e, or the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Not necessarily the most popular version of the game, but this particular adventure, out of all the adventures they ever printed, is actually a really good adventure, and it stays pretty true to the original adventure. The only thing you might find within the book is that some of the stat blocks and magic items need converting or translating over to 5e if you're going to run a 5e game. So this is made by Wizards of the Coast, so they published it. Sean Merwin and Matt Surnett wrote this thing, and basically it's really just a retelling. It is just a retelling. So, beneath the city of Waterdeep, there is a sinister dungeon that awaits adventurers brave enough to face its perils. It's created ages ago by the wizard Halaster, and the sprawling dungeon is a lair for terrible monsters, ruthless villains. In the dark chambers, they hunger for victims, they plot their downfall. And this is really a nice collection of about 79 to 80 locations with some instructions on how to create your own dungeon locations within the region, basically. I mean, it's a huge area, and the information in this book really only gives you enough information for the first level, and the rest you've got to make up yourself. So I'll just turn this over. So within the book actually came with two full-size poster maps, one with the actual lair area, the first level of Undermountain, and I've shown people in previous videos this, so this is the poster map, and on the other side, I'm not going to unroll it because it's just a bit too big, I've done a video on that already. On the other side you get a map of the actual interior of the Yawning Portal, but there is more, so you don't just get this and it folds out. You get another one, and some of the set pieces within the book itself, it's made up of about 3 adventures, and you get another one, and it's double-sided, and there's about 3 maps. So there's 2 half maps and a full-size map of locations that you can explore, and some of my videos do actually detail this map as well. So let's have a look inside. Okay, let's turn this over. So you've got your contents page, what you would expect. I'll just make sure it's in the center. Okay, so the first part of this just details the history. There's an introduction and the history of Undermountain, because Undermountain in that location wasn't created by Halaster. It was created by dwarves, and then we had Duragar and Drow moving in to sort of create problems for them, and then of course Halaster had to get rid of them, and then he's carved it out and created his own sort of funhouse, you might say, his own place to store all the things he's collected, all the monsters he's defeated or captured, and he had a bunch of apprentices who helped him out. Some of them sort of fell prey to this particular location. And if we keep looking through here, it gives you some of the different levels throughout the entire adventure. So it's not just the first level, it gives you about a paragraph for the levels that extend below the first level, which makes things kind of fun. It's a whole bunch of different locations with different themes that you can create and build out yourself, because it doesn't actually detail it in this book. Some of the artwork is quite nice. It's kind of cartoony, so if you don't like the cartoony look, then you probably won't like this. But I still thought a lot of the images are really big. You know, some of the newer books, the images are quite small, but you get like full page, half page images. It gives you the ways in and out. So there's the long, dark staircase, the grim passage, the falling stair, not just the Yawning Portal. There's other entrance ways that allow you to get further into this dungeon. And then as we turn over, it gives you a breakdown of the Yawning Portal. A lot more information that you would find. I mean, the Tales of the Yawning Portal had information, but this has a lot more, because we have about a couple of pages worth of NPCs, including Durin the Sixth, not the original one, but his ancestor, the White Lady. Rutherford is not detailed a huge amount in this particular section, but he's a key character. You're actually going to be tracking, or the players will be tracking down that particular character. And then a bunch of other characters that have a variety of motivations and provide adventure hooks and just interesting ways of interacting. And you get about 3 pages worth of that. The next part is made up of how to use the book, how resting works in the dungeon's location or the Undermountain location, and then, of course, it gives you a whole bunch of ways of creating your own adventures and locations. And this is illustrated by a whole lot of charts. So room purpose, so you can roll randomly for a room purpose to develop your location, give it natural room features, so there's a chart for that, and then whatever magical effects might be residing or working within that area, there's a chart for including that as well. You don't have to make it all up yourself, you can just roll or just look on the chart and pick the stuff you like. The next page here, combining the adventures. As I said, there are 3 different adventures, and it starts you at level 1. You could start it higher depending on how things go, because some of these locations are pretty deadly. I mean, a level 1 character or level 2 character is going to bump into some creatures that are pretty dangerous. It shows you how to weave it in, and Lady Lestra is probably the key way of building them into this adventure and following the trail of Rutherford. The first one is Czars' Invincible Army, and this consists of a half-elf mercenary who has taken control of 2 small tribes. One is a kobold tribe, and the other one is a goblinoid tribe. They're not doing too well, these kobolds and goblinoids, and actually I felt quite sorry as my players dispatched many of them, because they were actually in a really bad pickle between trying to deal with the monsters in Undermountain and having to follow the orders of Czar. It shows you how to start the adventure. There is background information, and a good chunk of it too. I mean, almost a whole page. And then throughout the adventure, you don't have to rely on that poster map. It does include the maps throughout it so each adventure actually sort of is set in a particular location on that level, and it gives you a map for that, illustrated here. It gives you the entry well. Right throughout this adventure, as you go, you're going to find a huge number of traps. There's a lot of adventurers that have got bitten off more than they can chew, and some who you'll find dead, others who are suffering from all sorts of other issues, whether that be madness or it doesn't matter. You get kennels, sturge nests, as I said, all the sorts of things you would expect, including some prisoners for you to rescue and try and get out of Undermountain, out of this location. There is a laboratory. There's a rather interesting kobold who seems to blow off his fingers, and yeah, you get to meet him, talk to him, and deal with Czar at some point. Now Czar is planning like a war, and he's got a war room. This is sort of where you're going to find Czar throughout this particular adventure, and this particular map is actually included as one of those poster maps. The next one is the Tombs of Dahon. Now, Tombs of Dahon is about a vampire who's really making life difficult for a particular individual, and she's really sort of stuck and will call on our heroes to try and assist her. And there she is right here. Varel is basically got a real problem, and you're going to sort that out, or the players are going to sort that out, and they're going to have to face up against this vampire. Now, I know what you're thinking. If the characters are like level 2 or 3 by now, which they quite possibly will be after playing the first adventure, how the heck do they deal with a vampire? Well, I would say replace it with the original vampire in the monster manual for 5e, use the stat block if you're using 4e, or just use a vampire spawn. Even a vampire spawn at level 2 or 3 is pretty rough. It includes, as I said, a map of that particular location, because the area is huge. It's all labelled out. It's easy to follow. It's not difficult to figure out where things are. And the Lance board room is probably the first location that they're going to have to contend with. Now, the Lance board room has got some pretty complicated rules. It is laid out reasonably well, so you can figure out what's going on, and it's easily transferable to Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And I would say this is a little bit like the Harry Potter scene in the Philosopher's Stone, where they ride on chess pieces or stand in locations and fight it out. In this situation, the players have to engage in this particular chessboard game, and they are transformed into the pieces. And yes, going to be a lot of fun. You'll enjoy running that. There's lots of experiments right throughout this, and they're going to come across a mummy who's been enhanced. They don't know it's been enhanced, but it will cause all sorts of trouble. And I know what you're thinking in terms of how do I figure out where the monsters are, because you might have noticed so far that there's no bold print indicating what the monster is. Well, actually what they've done is they've got a little bold area where it says creatures, and right there it will tell you what creature is in that location. It's really well formatted and laid out, so it is actually still pretty easy to find stuff. And it's laid out right here. You just keep going through. Magic items, you get pictures and some breakdown, but like I said, you'll probably have to do a bit of conversion. Root is one of the goblins you'll come across throughout this adventure. There's all sorts of really strange traps and magic items that cause them all sorts of trouble, and they can be utilised to their advantage, or they can cause absolute strife. You're going to come along. This particular adventure with the vampire is essentially going to be full of undead, so expect lots of ghouls, zombies, things like that. There's a smithery, a tomb area, and an observatory. Some strange, here we are, the Quill of Biting. It's basically, I mean, I don't know why you'd have that in there, but it's still interesting. And this location, I haven't actually shown you guys that particular map yet because I haven't released that video, but you will get to see it. And it is included in the book as one of those poster maps. So when you actually face the vampire in his lair, you will have a location to play with and use, so you don't have to draw it out. And you know me, I like to do things that don't require too much effort, and yes, this reduces the amount of hassle. It gives you a breakdown about what all those different pools and mist clouds actually do. The next one is Scaly Doom. Now, Scaly Doom is where they have to investigate what's happening to disappearing criminals in the southwest section of Undermountain on the first level. So this adventure assumes that you'll go in first adventure, and then when you complete that, you'll come back out, and then you'll get your second adventure, go back in, and then come back out. And so, of course, by the time they get to Scaly Doom, they've been into the dungeon location or Undermountain at least twice. Gives you the background, how to start the adventure, and it's a pretty solid hook to put them into it. There's no options, there's just one. I mean, all of the adventures only provide one hook, and it revolves mostly around lizard folk. I will say there is a basilisk in this particular adventure. At low level, it's going to cause a lot of trouble. It's near the front. Grim statues. So you're going to have an opportunity to clamber down a big statue, or at least have the party clamber down a big statue. Nice artwork, laid out well. Some of it has sections that state, okay, role-playing, so this is how to role-play a particular character that they might meet. Some have plot information. Other areas will have laid out, so if you need to find the treasure, it's actually got a heading for treasure. Serpent sacrifices. Okay, and as you can see, somebody's in trouble already, and they'll be having to deal with that. Shell games, besieged. There's a heap of different locations and some pretty nasty things. This is going to include a dark tentacle creature that comes out of a dwarf, and you can see the picture right there, right now. And there's a swamp area, which I suppose sounds a bit strange, but the locations in Undermountain are supposed to sort of be sprawling, not just sort of dungeon or mine-like, left over by the dwarves, but including a lot of exotic locations. And at this point, we're going to start to wrap up and find out what happened to Rutherford. The wrap-up and how to sort that out is listed near the end of the adventure. Now, for those of you who were concerned that as you were playing through this, that you wouldn't have the big map inside the book, Well, it does include it, but as you can see on an A4 size page, it is a complicated map. It is huge. You can see how complicated it is. And not all of the areas are numbered. So there are whole sections that are unnumbered, and those are locations that you build out and create and do things yourself with. You know, as the dungeon master, you'll make a decision about what's going to be there and how that might change. There's a Hall of Mirrors. Now, when I had a look at the Hall of Mirrors, you think about something like the old Bruce Lee movie, or something like Conan the Barbarian, and those scenes that you saw where there's a hall of magic mirrors that cause all sorts of trouble. I mean, you're going to get to include this in your adventure because there is one. And so that's going to be a lot of smashed glass coming up. A bone-crushing trap, libraries, all that sort of stuff. Weird thing, not everything that they come across that looks dangerous is actually going to hurt them. The Deadman Throne is an example of something that is actually just supposed to sort of distract them. And there's an opportunity throughout this adventure for them to come across some drow and spiders. There is an altar of the spider god and a little section where they're going to either get to fight or role play that out and see what happens. The Stone of Shielding. I don't remember too much about the Stone of Shielding. I do know that there was a whole lot of orbs within this particular adventure that included all sorts of strange abilities to trap creatures in, and my players used them to trap, I think, the basilisk and a couple of other creatures in it, depending on the size of that creature. So almost done here. As I said, about 79 to 80 locations are included, and then from there it gives you a chart for random encounters. And after that, really, unless you're playing 4th ed edition, it's all stat blocks for the monsters and creatures and a few pictures included, which won't be much good to you if you're going to be playing with 5th ed edition. But truthfully, because so much of that information is not necessarily included right throughout the book and it's near the end, it's still a pretty good deal. I thought it was a nice adventure. You can still pick it up online. You just have to have a look around. It's not a long book. I mean, in terms of the actual content for the adventure, it would stop about page 89. So it's a pretty small book compared to other books you might have come across. So that's really all I have on the Halls of Undermountain. I do recommend this book. I've played this adventure through for 4th ed edition. I'd have no problems running it again, and I know I've had some players come up to me and say, look, Fred, you know, I don't want to play the Tales from the Yawning Portal. I want to actually explore Undermountain because that's a big deal for me. I'll be happy to run this again for 5th ed edition. It doesn't require an awful lot of work as far as I'm concerned. If you found this video helpful or informative, please share, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have any questions about the Halls of Undermountain, I am happy to answer those questions. Put them in the comments, and I will answer any questions after this particular live stream. I'm going to leave it running for a while. And until next time, keep rolling those 20s.